Hi guys, Thom Hunt here in the kit room, and today's subject is again a question that's been asked on the YouTube channel, and it's how do you approach pressured waters? Now this is something that's right in my wheelhouse because in the UK here we've got a good number of lure anglers that's turning into more and more lure anglers every year, and we have got a limited number of venues. All right, some venues obviously are quite famous, so lots of people go and fish them and the water becomes quite pressured, the fish are quite pressured. So there are plenty of tips I can give you on how to try and get more bites in those scenarios. Before we get into it, I'd just like to say here in the UK, I've been nominated for Lure Angler of the Year. Really proud achievement for me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the link. It's basically voted for. So if any of you guys out there have enjoyed my content in the past, you like my channel, that type of thing, it would be a mega help if you could go into the description. I'll leave the link for the poll. Click on it and then go through. There's a few different categories in there that you might not understand, like Carp Angler of the Year and Venue of the Year. So if you're from abroad, just kind of have a read of them and pick whichever one you want. But keep going until you get to the lure fishing section. And yeah, I really appreciate any votes. Anyway, let's get into the subject. So yeah, here in the UK, we've got quite a few pressured waters, and really there's a couple of principles that I want to try and get across to you, and then I'll give you some specific tips. But the way to think about it is, because I've spent a long time thinking about this, is how fish feed in their natural environment versus how they feed and how they learn and their behaviour compared to when we're offering an artificial bait. So the first principle that I want to get across is you're trying to make your lure as low risk as possible. Now I'll get into that in a sec, because you might think, what on earth is he talking about, low risk? That's a principle I'm going to explain, and it's very interesting, and the more you learn and think like this, the better an angler I think you'll become. The second one is, how do we bypass the fish thinking? Because that's essentially what they're doing. They're thinking and they're making a decision. When they're unpressured, when they're wild, you wind a bait past them, they think it's food. They don't really, there's no reason for them to think otherwise. They come up and hit it. You get plenty of bites. On pressured waters, they're thinking about it a lot more and they're making much more educated decisions. Now, I'm not going to go as far to say fish are super clever and they'll figure out a riddle or a puzzle or anything like that, but they do learn by association. So over time, there's little things that they learn to avoid, and there's little things that they have learned to sort of change their behaviour in the direction of. If we can bypass that into what I call the primal brain, the instinctual brain, so I guess that would be the amygdala in a human, your caveman brain, it doesn't really consciously think a huge amount. It's reflexes, it's reactions, it's instincts, all right? So I'll give you a few tips on how to do that, and we bypass the thinking brain, but really the low risk scenario is all about the thinking brain. So let's get into that principle. So I want you to imagine a pike. He lives in a river, for example. He swims around, he gets born, and he starts feeding. He feeds on invertebrates to start with when he's small, tiny snails and bloodworm and various different insects. Then he grows up and starts eating fry all the way through to whatever's available. Maybe he'll eat crayfish, you know, bigger fish if there's bream around, that type of stuff. Every time he consumes a live, wild, natural product, so every time he eats a shoalfish, a roach, for example, there's a massive benefit for him. Fills his tummy up, he gets a successful hunt, and there's no downside. He comes up, he eats, he's got a full tummy, he grows even more. That's what a predator's job is. Every time we offer a lure that might be similar, he comes up, he eats it, but there's a downside. He obviously gets caught, all right? So over time, those fish start trying to work out, well, what's the difference between a real bait and what's the difference between an artificial bait? Because I'm trying to avoid the downside, getting caught, and I'm trying to increase my upside, which is just going to eat natural food. So the lowest risk baits that we can offer are always going to be the ones that mimic natural baits as much as possible. So that's the first principle with low risk. He's going to skew his decision making more and more and more towards lifelike, or in his mind, real baits, because they offer the highest reward and no risk. He never gets caught, for example, on a roach, not when we're lure fishing anyway. So my first principle is think about baits that are really lifelike. So here we've got the Westin Hyper Tees. Here we've got Stanley the Stickleback, and things like the Cree Craw. All right, all are excellent imitators of natural wild baits that he would eat. That he basically, we're tricking him as much as possible. So think about your colours as well. Avoid your fire tigers, avoid your pinks, avoid the garish colours that are. There's no fish that ever swam round that had a bright pink back to it. There's no fish that swims round that's a natural occurring bait fish that is a fire tiger pattern. All right, so go as natural as you can. Get those baits that have got really lifelike fins, and that's a superb tip. My second tip, again with low risk, is around size of baits. Now, you wouldn't believe how many 10 kilo plus pike I've had on really tiny baits, 10 centimeters or less. And again, it's the same thing. The more and more he gets caught on 6, 8, 10-inch lures, the more and more when something comes past that size, he's had a negative experience with that in the past. How often do they get negative experiences when they're fry feeding? Not really that often, because who goes pike fishing and uses a 7.5 centimeter Stanley the Stickleback? Now, that might be a bit of an extreme example, but think about it like that. You know, they're very, very low risk baits, because not many people are offering, especially if you're pike fishing, for example, not many people are offering baits that big. So it's a very safe option for them, very low risk. So the more that we can try and think about that, the more we're skewing it in our favour. That definitely works on pressured waters. Another one, so for example, we've got the Shad Tees Hollow here in 8 centimetres. Now it's got a hollow bit in the middle, which I really love. But the main reason I'm loving this is because I'm thinking about adding scent. So there's a lot of natural scents out there. So on the Cree Craw, for example, you can get creature bait or crawfish style flavours. Definitely put them on those. On these ones, we can get maybe fishy flavoured ones that just gives another little kind of added incentive, an added curiosity, and you can fill the centre of these Shad Tees Hollows. Brand new, just come out, and I think that's a fantastic way, and it'll keep the scent in there for so much longer. So small, natural coloured baits, maybe with a little bit of scent, or definitely with lifelike fins on. And the last low risk scenario is around how they change their behaviour at night. So you will find on a lot of pressured waters, most lure fishing, certainly for pike and perch, maybe a little bit less so for zander, but a lot of lure fishing gets done during daylight hours. Now, do consider you're always going to need a little bit of ambient light for your lure fishing for pike and perch, a little bit of street light, or maybe if it's around like a jetty area that's got lights, that type of thing. But yeah, do think about how they change their behavior, because if they get caught in the day, they're going to stop feeding in the daytime and they're going to start feeding at nighttime. And then, like I said, the more and more they feed at night and they're not getting caught, the more it's a safe option, the more it's a low risk option for them. And that's what we're trying to take advantage. We're trying to take advantage of when they are seeking low risk scenarios, because that is the best way to offer what they think is a low risk bait, and they're going to be most aggressive towards that. On the other side of that, you've got to think about your reaction strikes. Reaction strikes. So I did mention, obviously, natural baits. There are other ways that you can almost bypass, like I said, bypass them thinking about it, and you're trying to get them to just lash out. So number one, it is possible to fish big garish baits. Generally, I need structure. They need to be next to structure, because what I'm trying to do is, number one, when they're next to structure, they're in a predictable place. If they're not next to structure, they're often roaming around in open water, which means if you put a bait past them that isn't very tempting for them, a big crankbait, a bright orange bait, etc., etc., they'll often, if they've got the opportunity to just move out the way, they will. They'll move out the way and they'll drift off. But if you're on structure, 9 times out of 10, those fish want to stay on structure, which gives you the ability to run a crankbait straight through there, to bash it. If there might be pipes, there might be rocks, there might be jetties, that type of stuff. The more you can actually get into their environment and aggravate them. You're looking for an angry, lashing out response. It's not going to be a feeding response. With this, we're looking for a feeding response, small natural baits. When you're looking for a reaction strike, you're looking for an aggressive strike, a territory strike, like they just want to lash out, they get angry at it, all right? So you can still catch them on garish colours, but it's got to be in certain scenarios. One of the best ways to do that as well has got to be speed. So in the summertime for me, that is a continuous speed. Crankbaits are my number ones. Loads of aggressive vibrations. Like, you can dig it into the bottom, you can stir the bottom up, you can deflect off rocks, you can deflect off jetties. That gets a really, really aggressive response going out of predatory fish. And the other way, in wintertime, not so much speed in terms of continuous speed, it's short bursts of speed, which is why a jerkbait like a Westin swim or a platypus, suspending style jerkbaits, fished very, very slow, as in might take you 3, 4, 5 minutes to fish a cast, but it's when you whack, you're leaving the pause. You want that bite just after that bait has moved slightly, and it's that speed of movement that a jerkbait gives that can be absolutely deadly. So in the summertime, continuous speed, keep moving that crankbait, get that reel handle turning. In the wintertime, it's speed again, but in a different presentation. You want quick, short jerks and then long suspended pauses. So there you go, guys. They're my best tips. Go supernatural or go for a reaction strike. On pressured fish, you will definitely get more bites. And yeah, any tips or questions that you guys have got, please drop them in the comments below. I haven't done a video for 3 months. I've got a 6-month-old baby boy. Life's been difficult. I'm just busy at the moment. But I want to try and do more of these, and I love having conversations with you guys. So yeah, drop any comments that you found on pressured fish down below, and I'll try and get back to everyone. But until then, thanks very much for the question, Yell. See you on the next one.